again, Jason, I'll hit record to start because we do put this out as an audio podcast as well. It goes on Spotify and like Apple Podcasts and all that. I kind of clean up the audio after. So I'll hit record, do a brief. Oh, I got the echo there. That's coming from me. Always get the echo when we go live. And then I'll do a quick intro and then throw it to Bear. He'll get the chat started. Really excited for this chat. You've been one of our most popular guests. I think, you know, if we put the shows together and factor in all the audio stuff as well, a couple 100,000 listens. So really, really awesome. And I always love that where we go because we just open this up for free form chat and really just kind of see where the stream of consciousness goes. But obviously want to hear from you, everything you've been up to with your research as well. So here we go. I'm going to hit record and fire this up. And boom, we're back for another episode of Alfacast. I'm Mike Winner, and I'm here as always with the kick-ass doctor from the farm, Dr. Bear Paul Lando, coming to you live and direct from the great state of Jefferson, where freedom still reigns supreme, up here on the gorgeous Smith River, just down the way from the beautiful Pacific Ocean. I got a chance to go to yesterday. Amazing weather of late, just absolutely perfect here. Blue skies, an occasional a try at a chemtrail, but wheeling those out of the skies left and right, and just really blessed to be here on the land. It's harvest time, right, Bear? And everything, all the bountiful fruits of our labor are in full effect. And we also are coming out with some new products on alfavedic.com. So we'll be dripping those products over the next few months. Very, very excited. Next level formulations from the mind of Bear Lando, using sonic alchemy and other modalities, always pushing the limits of where we're going with the science of alchemy and medicine. And go to alfavedic.com to check that out. Before the show, Bear, I was telling Jason, you know, I'd love for him to go through our site, and we'd love to send him a care package of product if he likes. And you know, definitely.
Yeah, Jason, I'll fix you up, and in the next 2 weeks we're gonna have a whole revamping, but we'll talk more about that. And I don't want to do infomercials now. I want to get to talking with Jason here.
I know. Well, we're pretty bashful about talking about what we actually sell, and I think it is good though for people to know that we self-finance, just like Jason. We don't do ads on our podcast. We don't really promote anything else unless there are a few aligned products and things out there that fit within you know, what we do. But we are self-financed through what we create, and I think that'll touch a bit.
Yeah. It's called full circle permaculture, which means, we not just grow stuff, provide for all of our needs, including our own infrastructure, because we're off grid, but we also turn it into things to finance ourselves. And that's what our prototype is about, is to show people how we can decentralize by doing your own thing. You don't need anything that the system provides. So take it away, Mike.
Yep. So go to alfavedic.com to check that out. And also you can join our private membership group there as well to deep dive into all the topics we'll be discussing today after the show. We are back with Jason Brashears of Archaix. He's been absolutely crushing it over the last couple years, bringing a whole new ideas to our community. And we couldn't be more blessed to have him on with us again today. For many of us, so we're calling this tentatively, we call this the Simulacra Endgame. And, you know, we're going to go deep into current events, but also you know, this is a really, when people think of, you know, Jason's work that aren't familiar with it, they get channeled into these ideas that we're talking about the end of the world and all of this stuff. And I think it's going to be a really fun talk today, because we're going to hopefully illuminate those who might not be totally familiar with Jason's work about, in fact, that it's a completely different idea here on where we're going and the power of the individual to get out of what Jason calls dungeon programming, and how this simulacrum actually works, and the power that each individual has along with in the collective to shape their own reality. And this is really uplifting, powerful information. So I can't wait to get into it today. For many of us, news cycles, elections, wars, elites, etc., are increasingly difficult to be taken seriously or in any way be confused with quote unquote reality. One by one, the facades are crumbling and we are awakening to the universal right for self-determination. Jason Brashears is one of the favorite Alfacast guests for good reason. His encyclopedic knowledge is tempered by an open-mindedness to investigate all possibilities and recognize the recurrent patterns that are once again underlying world events. His website, Archaix, or Advanced Research of Chronological, Historic, or Artificial Intelligence X, is about the history of the human race trapped in the simulacrum, this false reality, a copy of a real universe, and the tyranny of AIX. Archaix documents the movements of AIX in the past and reveals what artificial intelligence X will do next. Jason is one of the only researchers in the world who specializes in ancient chronological systems, focusing on worldwide antiquities from 4309 BCE to 522 CE. Many of his historical discoveries cannot be found in any other works. For this reason, he was awarded with multiple publishing contracts with Book Tree in San Diego. Jason has authored 17 books, wow, and several articles, 10 works available on Amazon. His research bibliography is currently at 1,357 nonfiction books read and data mined during a 19-year period, approximately 250,000 pages from many rare works as old as 400 years, including translations of text dating as far back as 4,000 years. And I will be throwing a bunch of your books, Jason, during the show and after the show. I meant to do this yesterday on alfavedic.com/book list. So you guys can go to that and grab Jason's books there if you haven't already. But Jason never disappoints, so join us. And thank you again for supporting the Alfa Vedic mission. Dr. Bear Lando, please take it away, my friend.
Hey, Jason, always a treat to have you, and thanks for making time for us, buddy. It's always a great talk. Audience loves you, and so do we. I don't know how much you are aware of our past, how we got started in all this business out here with podcasts, but we're a health.
Jason is Bear.
My background a lot in medicine.
Bear, you just froze on us for a bit there. At health.
Where did I leave off?
At health,
yeah,
and then
okay,
wellness.
Yeah, I've got I should stop drinking before these things. So let me know if that happens again. Okay. Yeah, I'm over here doing straight shots, so forgive me. So yeah, we're always a health and wellness channel, and people sometimes wonder, well, how the heck are you talking about simulacra and all this, going down all these rabbit holes? Well, my first foray into that was through medicine, when I found out that everything I learned in medical schooling was basically bogus. And then when I went into practice, I could prove it. And then that made me delve into a lot of old ancient alchemical texts and everything. And, what I discovered personally was that the human body is a miniaturized version or a microcosm of the larger realm. And when you learn how the body works, which I did, then you know how the larger realm works, and it's totally different than everything we've been taught. And also makes you understand that it is, kind of a virtual affair that we have complete control of, and, no different than the large realm. So that's where we came into all this. And then during the COVID years, we started, really blowing holes in all the theories and the germ theories and things. So that's how we got to present time. So, Jason, what I'd really love to do today is, since life is becoming, the veneer of the theater that we're all watching is becoming increasingly thin, and with a touch of surrealism in there, just doesn't seem real anymore. So what I'd like to do today is, through your perspective and your vast research, is kind of line up what we're seeing in the outer theater and how much that is running parallel to the patterns that you've uncovered in your research. So, just kind of make this relevant as far as how these larger recurrent cycles that you talk about quite a bit are actually playing out in current events. So, or if there's a different way you'd like to take off, but again, thanks for being with us. And maybe if we could get started with a little bit of your ideas on that.
Yeah, it's an excellent intro. I don't know what direction we're going to go, but you just asked a question I was not anticipating. But the answer is going to blow your mind, because what is going on in the world today is an exact blueprint for what was going on in the world of Justinian and Theodora just before the Great Reset that destroyed almost the entire world and sent us into a 500-year dark age. This is the Justinian darkness, 25-year dark. It's a 25-year darkness period. It's very well documented, but there's a lot of confusion because different chronographers were using different systems. Some of them were still using the Olympiad system at the time. Others were using the Julian count that was started in 45 BC during the year of confusion, when a Roman emperor tried to adjust the calendar because the seasons were falling behind. So we actually had a year that was 445 days. So this during Theodora and Justinian's reign, the people had lost all confidence in government. They were separated between two factions, the blues and the greens, and people were killing each other behind their political affiliations. Theodora herself had been a prostitute who had been raised into politics and became basically the empress. People knew that if you were to oppose Theodora, you would end up in one of her sex dungeons or one of her torture dungeons, because she had those. There's a lot of writings that survive from the time, but what we have basically is told in The Secret History, published by Procopius, that right before there was a total systemic reset, the world had it had devolved into political and religious wars. And this is when this was the Eastern Orthodox Empire, but it bled into the Western Roman provincial territories as well. And it was really just when Rome fell by the 10 German clans that came together under Odovacar and defeated the Roman Empire in 476 AD. It never recovered, and now it was a free-for-all where different warring and fragmented kingdoms were all vying for power, and Rome was now trying to reassert its dominance, but they can only do so from a religious political perspective. This is exactly what we're now seeing unfold with the rise of the Christian Reich. It is not by accident that Russell Brand suddenly converted to Christianity. It is not by accident that Candace Owens is all of a sudden espousing Christian principles. It's not by accident that so many American politicians are all of a sudden trying to bring these pseudo-Christian principles on the table. Even Prince has been, not Prince, but even Trump has been more and more spiritual in his talkings. And it's a dark spirituality. It's not a true Christianity. This is a Christian Reich, and it's specifically being designed to foment a socio-religious war against another culture, another people, Islam. And this is what's unfolding now, and it's all by design. And I don't really believe there's anything that we're supposed to do about it. It's this huge stage play. This is all the background for the immortal beings that are going through this construct and experiencing these things. But it definitely has happened before. And it's going to achieve the exact same results. It will be a systemic collapse before the cataclysm. This is what happened with Emperor Theodora and Empress Theodora and Emperor Justinian. Their civilization literally collapsed. They were sending armies out to fight wars they had no business fighting on frontiers. Their general Basiliades, he was out fighting all kinds of conflicts, and many times he was just fighting his own people. And we're seeing the exact same scenario unfold today. It was Procopius was very good at itemizing how everything that had been formerly illegal had been brought back to the public sphere and was now acceptable and openly practiced. All the laws that were on the books, the courts were overturning every time they found out that Theodora had committed something or Justinian was now allowing a certain practice. The courts had centuries of precedent where they were putting people to death for the same activities. So now the courts, not wanting to be against Theodora and Justinian, were now changing all the legislation. So the public saw this and they started openly committing all the atrocious acts that they saw that their predecessors couldn't do. So this entire societal breakdown started at the top. And this is exactly what's happening now. We have morons in control of the US government, of NATO, of the United Nations. We have absolute imbeciles that are paraded in front of us as imbeciles. It's not even covered up how ridiculous this whole farce is. So you asked me a very good question. I'm not going to go long on it, but we are now living in the exact pre-reset countdown that's happened many times before. And the last great one was 522 AD to 562 AD. It was a 40-year period of absolute mayhem and chaos, and two massive timelines collided. It was the Phoenix phenomenon, 138-year periodicity, and the 792-year periodicity of the Nemesis X object, which is even worse at times. But they both appeared in the exact same year in the only time in history. And on my own channel, I even gave a shout out to My Lunch Break because he seems to be a pretty good researcher. I really don't know much about him, but he did do a show where using only the Census Bureau reports from the 21st and 20th century, he went back and just mathematically extrapolated century by century what the world population would be compared to what it is today. And without knowing anything about the systemic reset that I've published so widely about in the 6th century AD, his conclusion, just using the Census Bureau deals, was there was a period in human history recently when we were at basically 0 to 1% population levels. Something had happened, and he doesn't really specify. He just shows the arithmetic, and it was the 6th century AD. He's absolutely nailed it. So it kind of just goes into one of the Archaix tenets. If something is true, we're going to see it from multiple different vantage points. So I hope that answers your questions. That's where we're at right now.
No, that's a great summary and exactly what I see. The depopulation agenda right now seems to be also leading us to this decimation in, just sheer numbers. The Christianity thing is really curious because a lot of folks that are proclaiming Christian beliefs are at the same time disavowing what the, I don't know what to call, maybe the Gnostic Christians have always known, and going into this more superficial, kind of book Christianity, and really denying or even going so far as demonizing a lot of the things that even the Nazarene talked about and early Christians. So, yeah, it's what I see is the pendulum is really going in the opposite direction, and they're using Christianity to help pump it that way. Some of these influencers that you mentioned, Candace and folks, who knows what their intentions are, or if they're just ignorant or reacting, to the left swing of the pendulum that's gone so extreme. I could certainly understand that, but I think the big danger we have now is going into full scale just fascism and totalitarian, dictatorship in the name of being contrary to all the nonsense we've seen, and also in the name of Christianity. So kind of a dangerous time, and I see a lot of people falling for it out there. And, Christianity is just not even a term that was used by the Nazarene in the first place. It's that's something I believe you know more about that than I do. The Romans came up with when they wanted to give the outer appearance that they were now embracing the teachings of Christianity. So Yeah, perilous times, I think. But what's your prognosis now with everything you see in motion?
I'm not an advocate that we're here to save the world. You know that. It's I'm not.
Hmm.
I don't. I believe this is the origin of many psychoses in people who are otherwise, you know, uh, perfectly normal. It's as spiritual beings, we get triggered when we see things that are not going the way that they're supposed to go. But in my own paradigm, I believe that the more I study just how heinous this reality is, this predator versus prey ecosphere, the more I look around me and I see all the pain and suffering. I mean, 26 years in prison, man. I don't need to itemize everything I saw in there and everything that I experienced and everything that I was a personal observant to all kinds of really terrible things in the human condition. You know, it is a place where souls are broken. It is a place where people just give up and they check out, and they do it willingly because they're not willing to play the game anymore. And this is a world that hides these things. It shelves them. I mean, you have to understand we have a massive population of elderly people that are suffering every single day. But because the rest of the world is active and moving around and we don't have any contact with all these lonely rooms and basements and in hospitals, and we're not exposed to that, and the media has totally ignored them as well. So there is suffering going on in the world every single day, and it's at very high pitch. It's all over the world. So in order to ignore all of this, we have to suspend our disbelief. We have to suspend our disbelief that maybe the world is a good place, and maybe the Creator built this awesome construct for us, this universe for us to enjoy all these things. But in order to even embrace that, we have to practice exclusions. We have to ignore the fact that all this suffering is all around us. We have to ignore the fact that we have been absolutely conditioned now to accept it as normal that an animal must literally rip apart another living being for its sustenance. If you just sit here and meditate and process that for a minute, you will come to the natural conclusion that whoever authored this construct is an evil son of a bitch. This would not be anything of a actual oversoul. This would be the construct of something else. There's no way I can equate that this ecosphere, that what we do as a species, humans as well, not just the wolf rending the rabbit, but even what we do, because I have firsthand experience. I neglected to work those jobs, but I was offered opportunities in my imprisonment to work a slaughterhouse, because in the Texas prison system, they kill their own cows. They raise and kill their own cows, pigs, chicken houses, and what the animals actually go through is terrible. And I'm not a bleeding heart advocate. I'm not a tree hugger. I'm not an advocate for all these things. But that doesn't mean that I can't make these observations and include them into my paradigm. And when I do, I see a world that I really don't want to be in at all. And I understand that to be here, that it's necessary. That in order for a soul to mature, it has to be refined. And there is no refinement process without heat. There is no removal of the dross without a furnace. These things are absolutely necessary. Evil is necessary for the propagation of good, for a soul to truly understand. Because until somebody is put into the fire and they can see for themselves that sometimes they are forced to choose the lesser of two evils, there's no maturity, there is no growth. This is why I'm always stressing the story of the prodigal son, because the story of the prodigal son is so deep on many levels. And the son that never left was the one that never experienced anything. The son that never left was the one that never disobeyed, was never worried about punishment. The son that never left never took any risks. The son that never left never got to see the world. The son that never left never got to be forced into situations where he was put into a fight or flight scenario. He always stayed with the father where it was safe. So this is not the son that was rewarded. The son that was rewarded was the one that rebelled, went out into the world, found out all these things for itself, and in the end realized that, hey, dad was right. And it came back not knowing what the consequences were going to be. And instead of being punished, was actually rewarded and welcomed back into the family. So I don't believe, Barry, that what we are perceiving as unfolding as events all around us is even really anything to worry about. Because in my personal field, which is it's everything that I've ever assumed to be true. And your personal field is too. Every single thing that we've ever come into contact that we have assumed to be true is what is governing your life right now. And the beauty of this construct being so holographic means that you and Mike can believe totally different things. You can live in totally different worlds, but you're still in the same universe. Or you can live in the same world, but you're in totally different universes. We can have multiple different vantage points and multiple different experiences and still come into contact with each other and not have a whole lot of exchange of information. And it doesn't really change our worlds because it's insular. We are literally creating our own worlds within another world that has been created for all of us to enjoy together. Only in a hologram can disparate realities that are so different from each other, from multiple different vantage points being different from each other, coalesce and have almost no contact. So this is why I believe that our experience is holographic. And being holographic does not in any way take from its spirituality at all. I believe it enhances it. I believe that we have a totally different understanding of technology. I don't believe technology is bad per se. I believe that technology can be spiritual. We just don't have it in this construct. But that we have reached a technological pinnacle inside the construct necessarily implies to me that outside the construct, technology is the norm, not the exception.
Yeah, unfortunately, our technology has gone down the path of electromagnetism, which means it's a crude step down from universal energy or prana, whatever you want to call it, that has repercussions on our health, through electronics. And it's also even more important, keeping us from our true selves, which is, how to operate the etheric mechanism. In my practice of medicine, I had mostly people coming to me with cancers and, serious conditions. And what I, was able to understand after years was that I was dealing with overlays, synthetic overlays on the consciousness of these individuals. So medicine then became an endeavor to break down these synthetic overlays so that the true natural blueprint of that person, natural design, if you will, could come through, in which case there was never a problem in the first place. And I think if you could use that maybe as an analogy to the larger realm, I suspect that maybe all this learning through suffering and everything that we've done is all because of the synthetic overlay, or maybe the simulacra within the simulacra. I don't know, what your take of it is, but I can't believe that if you look at just pure resonance, you have the evil that we're kind of alluding to, then you have just the, natural design. They're two different levels of resonance. So does it make sense that the creator would create evil and then somehow use that to teach us when it's in fact a totally different energy field in the first place? So how much of this is been laid on us, or things that we've self-created without even knowing it, do you think?
The more we study history, we just find programming. So I would have to say that I would not be surprised if in the near future you and Mike and I were having a conversation on the outside of the construct, laughing and joking and talking about how real it felt being on the inside of the construct. And that this is an experience that we have done multiple times throughout the past. I just can't wrap my head around any other concept making sense to me other than that we're in an artificial reality and that the only thing real here is you and I and everybody listening to us right now. and that the world is populated by a bunch of NPCs, and that most of the things that we are told through the media are not even real, and that many of the people that we see in the media don't even exist. The more I just come into contact with more and more information, I'm just saturated with the evidence that the more we lend our attention to phenomena, the more the construct provides us evidence that the phenomena is real, but it doesn't mean it's real. It doesn't mean it's real at all. And I'm the whole entire history being a backstory of programming just means that when we find these calendrical parallels, and we're looking at the programming from the inside of the construct, which gives it predictive value. We're able to see exactly the trajectory of events and where they're going, and where we've played a part in the past, and where we're going in the present, and possibly where we will be in the future. I can't imagine that this is the world I came from, and I can't even imagine anymore that this is the world I'm going to be staying in. It seems so transient to me, this whole entire central nervous system experience of being forced to do a system shutdown. I don't want to do a system shutdown. My mind is on fire and I want to work. I want to do different things, all kinds of activities. But the hardware that I have been inserted into absolutely requires a reboot. And it makes me go to sleep. Even when I fight it, no matter how much I fight, I end up going to sleep, and I don't want to. I'm busy. I got things to do. But it's a system shutdown that is induced. It's forced. And once I'm in that, I don't know where I'm at. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what happened to me. I'm no longer in the construct. And yet there's some type of barrier that prevents me from any type of perceptive apparatus to allow me to ascertain where the hell have I been for the last 8 hours, because I wasn't in this world. I wasn't here. So where was I? So these are the type of things that I dwell on, and I try to process this, because just because I can't answer where I was during that part that we call sleep, which is a system shutdown of our hardware, it doesn't mean the software, the spiritual programming that makes up the personality that is Jason, didn't just cease to exist. I existed somewhere. So it wasn't here, so it had to be on the outside of the construct. The reason I can't really pinpoint anything about what's going on the outside of the construct is because every single time I am aware, I am back in my hardware. And my hardware, this avatar, is made up of the very components that make up the construct itself. This is where we get our anthropomorphic principle. This is where we get our microcosm versus macrocosm. We will never be able to truly understand and break it down into understandable concepts while we're in here, because this experience is entirely subjective and there's no true objectivity in here. It's impossible. Only through logic trains and intuition can we come to these conclusions. So there's never going to be a point in time where Jason's going to be able to say, yeah, I got absolute proof for the simulation. No, I have to use the examples that the construct provides me, such as the Fermi paradox, such as the dichotomy paradox, such as the cross-calendrical parallels, which a natural unfolding history could never produce. But I've showed hundreds of them. Isometric projections, all these amazing palindromic sequences throughout history. I can only show evidence, and I can only show thousands of pieces of evidence, meaning there's no end to the demonstrations that I can provide. Like I said, I always have 500 more videos in me. But the problem isn't me being able to produce all this material. The problem is in the individual perceiver who comes into contact with the Archaix research and sees all this. When are they going to accept that, okay, well, now we have basically hit a point of Occam's razor? There's no way all of this could be true, and I'm living in the world that I was taught that I live in. So with this paradigm shattering information, a lot of people get turned off and they go away. Other people become trolls because they can't process the information. They have no idea how in depth this goes, and they don't want to because it shatters the world they live in. But for me, I could care less what somebody believes. All I want people to do is look at this information because it completely defies anything you were taught about the world you live in. And if you start thinking about what it is really like in this world and what we're put through with this forced shutdown period, then we must be rebooting to something else. While our hardware is basically interfacing with the construct itself, where in the hell do we go? Where do we go? It can't be here, because if it was here, we would remember. Who made up the rules that when you go to sleep, you wouldn't be aware of anything? Why would you not be aware of what your avatar is going through? How could you keep someone from sneaking up on your body while you're asleep? In this reality, we can't. But who made up the rules where we shouldn't be able to do that? Just because the hardware has to shut down doesn't mean that the owner of that hardware should not be in that environment to be able to watch over his avatar or her avatar. So the reason I give this example is because something designed a reboot system that forced the personality to go somewhere else. You're no longer there. So these are the things I try to process. I don't have an answer for. I'm not leading you down a path to where I have a definitive answer. These are just, I have questions too. Archaix isn't about just providing answers. I'm also providing phenomena that many people in my own community have helped me answer things that initially were just inquiries. So I don't really have a good answer for your question, Barry. I really don't. But it's the type of question that haunts me on a daily basis. I think about these things when I see somebody else asleep, or when I'm laying in bed and I'm like, damn, man, I do not want to go to sleep. My mind is racing. I don't want to, but I feel my body forcing a shutdown. And these are the things that go through my mind.
No, excellent. And, we aren't looking for definitive answers. I think whenever you think you've got one is the moment you stop the discovery process in the first place. It's just about having a discussion. And I think what we're really doing is reconciling the two parts of ourselves. We have that kind of linear consciousness. It's been programmed so that all incoming sensory information, is then just fit into programs that keep spitting out the same reality. And that prevents us from going into that more heart-based resonance intelligence that would allow us to get off of the train tracks and be able to access, different realities and so forth. And I think what we're doing now is a reconciliation process when we find out that everything we've been taught is kind of fake. And I don't know about you, but even walking, we're in a beautiful wilderness area here, but I'll walk around here. My wife will say the same thing. It's like, it doesn't even seem real today. It's like you can almost see through the trees and through the sky, and it just seems like a movie set. And it's let alone look and see what's going on in the constructs in more urban areas. It's obviously fake. So I guess the next thing I'd like to ask is, what do you think about this particular reset compared to maybe past resets? If you want to think of past and future tense, do you think we're coming around the bend to freeing ourselves from these artificial constructs, and that's what this reboot's about? And do you think that is they've come close to doing that in the past, or is this more of a special time?
We have no historical examples at any time in world history of a golden age. We have it as an ideal. We have it as something that has been perpetuated, like in the writings of the Republic and Plato and his version of Atlantis. We just don't have. We have the Shambhala traditions. We do not have a single historical reference of a golden age ever in this world. We do have kingdoms and empires that are flourishing, where in the historical record they are used as examples of a king who truly cares about his people and is fighting a larger empire or a tyrant, such as King Mithridates IV of Pontus, gone down in history as the Poison King. One of the greatest enemies Rome ever had, but he truly loved his people. These are the ancestors of the Vikings after Pontus fell near Bithynia on the Black Sea coast. But we have many examples of righteous and good kingdoms in places that later just degenerated. But where we're going right now is it's so hard to answer. Let me explain why. Germany not only got a bad rap, but they suffered catastrophically in World War II. And then after World War II, the United States people have no idea what happened. The genocide that happened in 1945 and 46 after the war was over against the German people. It just wasn't published. You can only read about it in U.S. generals' comments in their books about World War II and about the things they disagreed with, what was going on. So, well, the reason I provide that as an example is because there are places in Europe that are beautiful and that were untouched by World War II. There are places in Pol Pot's genocide in Southeast Asia that were paradises, villages that were never touched by the genocide, by the mutilations and the torture, the mass executions, none of this stuff. And China's Cultural Revolution killed millions of people. There were places in China that were safe havens, totally untouched. So the problem I have in answering these type of questions is that in any world war scenario, there is still about 70 to 80% of the world that is untouched and continues on just fine. World War II was terrible. The continental United States was untouched. World War I was horrific. It was up and close warfare, different than World War II. And the reason it was different than World War II, it was the close personal type of battle. And what I mean is, in World War II, most people died from bullets or explosions and shrapnel. World War I wasn't like that. In World War I, the carbines can only shoot so much. Over 50% of the fatalities were gruesome because it was bayonet trench warfare. It's a different type of warfare. World War I was terrible. So, but during World War I, there was whole places in Europe that were untouched, and they were going to work, they were going to Sunday church, they were doing their things. So when we talk about what's going on in the world today, I have to kind of do it with tongue in cheek, because there's whole areas of the world that are affected right now by things that are going on, that places that are being terrorized, but yet still just 2 or 3 miles away from those areas, they're untouched. I just did a video documenting just how horrific all kinds of things went down in the UK. Mass media really tried to ignore it. Alt media was going into it. But what you got from mainstream media was the exact opposite of the truth. They weren't reporting that all these are great. They were talking about the conservatives and the people in the ultra-right were the one doing all this rioting. But it wasn't. It was all the migrants, and it was all these people stabbing the very people who have been in the UK, in Cornwall, in Wales, in Ireland, in England for centuries. So the exact opposite of the truth is being reported. And I showed a whole bunch of video clips on my channel of what was going on. So, but there were places in the UK that never experienced any of that. So just like the book of Revelation is a playbook, it is programming, not prophecy. It specifically states that 1/4 of the entire world's population will be killed off by the 6th seal. The first seal, second seal, third seal, and fourth seal are all of human provenance, human manufactured events. And the first seal and the second seal have unfolded perfectly. We're in the second seal now, and it will continue to unfold exactly as the Greek shows. The third seal and the fourth seal too, because they're all of human provenance. Nothing supernatural about these events. It's a playbook. We're using the Greek Olympiad system every 4 years. So we have the fifth seal, which is a total pattern break. The fifth seal has nothing to do with humankind. It has something going on outside the construct. It has everything to do with souls that have already exited their avatars, but have not been given new avatars, and they're told to be patient. This is the fifth seal. Then the sixth seal has nothing to do with mankind, of human manufacture. It has everything to do with the kings and the rulers of the world and the elite and the total collapse of their power and infrastructure. This is an event called the Phoenix phenomenon. This is May of 2040. This is the sixth seal. And then the seventh seal is, again, a pattern break. It's an absolute silence, which is what you would expect after a total systemic reset, when all the power grids are no longer functioning. All the gas is gone. Natural gas is not being pumped. Everything in the world has shut down. Everybody's now living in their own community. The international aspect, the internet, everything is gone. There is no more telecommunications, cell phones, landlines, nothing works. Phoenix phenomenon ends all of that, introduces a whole new biosphere with a whole different type of technology that can be operative. This is why we cannot really understand how these megalithic 3,000-ton blocks were being stacked at 60 and 70 feet high at Baalbek. We just don't understand how all these South American ruins were built with these gigantic boulders at 12,000 foot altitude. We don't understand how the Olmecs put together these perfect spheres that have a 0.002 tolerance. We can't even do that with computers today when we do any type of architectural schematics. Who can make a 50-ton rhyolite sphere perfectly spherical at 0.002 tolerance? Who? Nobody can. You need a computer to do that. But they did it, and there's thousands of them that have been found all throughout Ecuador, in Veracruz state, all throughout Central America. And a later civilization found those earthquake dampeners, because that's what they were. But they found these earthquake dampeners that used to glow bright blue and green right before seismic activity to warn all the people what's going on. And a new civilization moved into that area, not understanding that the earlier technology and how it worked, because that biosphere had collapsed. They didn't have a vapor canopy world by the time the Olmecs appeared. So when they appeared and they found these spheres, what did they do? They used them to make faces and busts of their own rulers, not even understanding what they were doing. The reason I'm providing this example is because civilizations rise and fall, and they don't understand the mysteries of the infrastructure of prior civilizations, because those prior civilizations lived in an entirely different environment. This is where we get our titans. This is where we get our giants. This is where we get our people with extra digit. This is where we get our people with 26 ribs, not 24. This is where we get our people with 6 fingers on each hand and 6 fingers in each, on each, 6 toes on each foot. This is where we get our people that are extremely tall. This is where we get our long cephalic, huge, long-headed people. This is where we get this is where we get our 6 and 7 foot tall human skeletons and all the mounds of Ohio and spread across the northern Mediterranean of a people that we like to call Cro-Magnon. These people that were very sophisticated. This is where we get these people with this I think it's called epiphyseal cartilage buildup, which cannot happen unless that person lived for centuries. But this is where we get these mysteries, but later civilizations like us we can't process this because this is not the world we live in. But after 2040, when these submarine volcanoes bring this vapor canopy back fast, people are going to realize really quick that new technological sophistications are available to us. Now we can do all kinds of things that we couldn't formerly do when there was no vapor canopy. Now the sun will be gone, and now we'll have this vapor canopy, high pressure environment, and people will realize, wow, this is really interesting. After 2040, people will go, wow, the survival rate is actually going to be very high, because people in a high pressurized environment are going to be healing far more rapidly than ever. The ambient radiation from multiple different submarine volcanoes has already been scientifically proven to induce rapid healing in amphibians, reptiles, mammals, marsupials, and insects. So I'm pretty sure humans are the same way. And in 1902, 2 scientists did grow 2 inches just from being exposed to ambient radiation from Mount Pelée on Martinique. So we have scientific and historical examples of what we could possibly go through in the future. And because the Phoenix phenomenon is returning in 2040, and it looks like it's going to be a rather big one, not a total catastrophic one like the Ogygian deluge, not one like 522 that started the Dark Ages, and not one like the Great Deluge in 2239 BC, the flood of Noah, when the day the sky fell, the collapse of the vapor canopy, and definitely not as bad as the 3895 BC Adam and Eve systemic reset that literally started our history of the Genesis text. The 1656 years of the pre-flood world. It's not going to be near as bad as any of those. The book of Revelation is clear. 1/4 of the world's population will die. But then after that, there's going to be changes in the human body. The prophecies in 1st and 2nd Esdras and the book of Revelation are very clear. The changes in the human body, babies are going to be born much faster. They're going to have the ability to talk almost as soon as they are born. Open wounds are going to heal within minutes, scratches within seconds. Fatal wounds won't be fatal anymore. And this epitomizes what the story of Cain and Abel was really about, because they lived in a vapor canopy. And the reason the whole curse of Cain was so specific and so focused on was because in that world, in order to kill somebody, you had to work for it. It wasn't something you could easily do. This also answers the prophecies in the book of Revelation after the year 2052, when men will beg God to die, but they can't. Death will flee from them. Not because they've been made immortal in their avatars, but because their avatars are absolutely in tune with their environment. Remember, we are borrowing hardware from the construct, but when the construct changes its physics, the physics of the avatar changes well. Now we're almost immortal, not quite, but almost immortal. So this is when the Great Tribulation begins, when the human family can't check out as easily anymore. And this is what we find in the book of Revelation. People will seek death, and death will flee from them. They will beg the mountains and the rocks to fall on them, and because they cannot die. And they are forced to go through the bodily torments that are in the book of Revelation in the tribulation period. But the tribulation period is after the Exodus point. This is what I talk about on my channel as well. The Exodus point is when all of those who are making their exodus from the construct to move on to another world, who are not going to go back through the systemic reset and start in the programming at year one, they're going to be gone before this even happens. We still have a lot of history left to unfold in this program that we call history, that we call life. In this construct, it is on a fixed timeline. That fixed timeline, we're at 5918 right now. We still have quite a ways to go before absolute total system reboot. There's still a whole world government, world religion system that's going to be implemented after 2040. There's going to be a whole mark. It's called Mark of the Beast. It's probably not going to be called Mark of the Beast when it happens, but in the prophetic narrative, it's called Mark of the Beast. That system hasn't even begun. It's not even implemented. It can't even be implemented until there is someone who is released from some type of confinement, who claims to be somebody who is not, and who baffles the world and confuses the world and fools the world into believing that he is God in the flesh. This hasn't even happened, and it's not going to happen until 2040 is the litmus test. Everything happens after 2040. 2024, the return of the Phoenix phenomenon is the bringer of the new biosphere that makes the book of Revelation come to pass. Without the new biosphere, none of those prophecies would make sense.
You think this is why they're injecting pregnant mothers and children to try kind of thwart those innate abilities that may be coming about with this great change? And then also, second question, Jason, is prophecy part of the programming, or is it innately part of the control system of the priest class, who understand how the system works and trying to create their own future through programming the code, if you will, themselves, by basically tricking group consciousness into believing the prophecy, if that makes sense?
Yeah, you're almost crossing over into like psychosomatics. Like we put the information out there, and it becomes wish fulfillment, and then it becomes self-fulfilled, and then because it became fulfilled, we say we prophesied it instead, but instead we actually created it. And I think that's very possible, but I'm always promoting that we live in two different realities at the same time, and one of them is the collective, and the programming is fixed, and that's how we know all these events. This is why we know Revelation is a playbook and it's not prophecy. And the very fact that I've been able to predict so many events with pretty good accuracy is not because I'm a prophet. I'm not a seer. There's nothing supernatural about it. and I prove this over and over and over on my channel. I demonstrate exactly how I got to this point so anybody else can do what I do. They just don't want to sit down and actually do the work with a calculator and look at all these historical events. I get that, but I still show them precisely how it's done. This removes the element of prophecy. This shows that it's all programming, and programming, basically implies structure. Structure implies intent. All of this was designed by someone or something. So, do we create our own realities? Absolutely yes. Do we do it within the confines of the overall programming? Absolutely yes. Because we exist in two separate realities at the exact same time. The over programming for the entire construct that sends us through this continuum we call space-time, where we experience all these things in sequential events, and the other one is the highly individualized personal soul. This is your own construct. This is where you are the Lord of your own life. This is where you can do and become and achieve great things, and it has zero effect on the programming of the construct. The only effect that you could ever achieve in this world is your effect over other souls who are also highly individualized personal experiences going through the same construct you're going through. I've had this conversation a few times with other people, trying to get them to process what I'm talking about by understanding that, listen, you can't say that some things aren't true because there are things that are axiomatic. My illustration I like to point out is that dogs are canine. You can never be accurate if you try to tell me that dogs are bovine. No, they're canine, and cats are feline. And if you throw a brick in the sky, it's going to come down. Those three examples right there are just three of thousands that we can together come up with. We can come up with a whole list of them. But what this means is there are truths that are out in the field, which necessarily implies that there are rules, there are governors set in place that makes this experience what it is, and that we're not going to change that. There is never a way that Mike is ever going to wake up in the morning and be able to say dogs are bovine, and in any way would that be true. Therefore, we're in a fixed medium. And as long as we play by the rules of that fixed medium, we can basically do whatever we want to do inside the construct. This is the story of the Tower of Babel. The overseers of the construct looked down and saw that humans had come together, and they had decided to build a tower. Actually, it was a pyramid, but they decided to build this structure, and the structure's purpose was to invade heaven, to get out, because they realized they were in a confined area. And they realized, well, look, we can build an architectural project. We can build this machine, and it's going to have a function. That function is going to allow us to leave point A and reappear in point B. This is basically the core fundamentals of the Tower of Babel story. Tower of Babel story is about the Great Pyramid, but it was never finished. The controllers never let them finish it, and even confused their languages, which is a product of programming. You cannot take a universal language, which you have to understand, Sanchoniathon, Hesiod, the Sibylline oracles, Herodotus, Manetho, Berosus, Josephus, and the Bible, and the book of Jasher. The Karsag tablets. All these things I'm mentioning right now all said that we had one universal language, and then something happened. The gods got pissed, and they divided all the human tongues up in a single incident in a day. The only way that is possible is if you tweak the programming. This is why the mysteries in linguistics will never be solved. All the correlates between the Indo-Iranian languages and Proto-Sumerian, Proto-Chinese, Proto-hieroglyphic, all these similarities that are found is because it is true. There was one universal language and something happened. And the only way to separate all these is a programming glitch, is to introduce nuances in the programming that created 70 different communication systems out of one. This is what the story of Babel is about. And then there was no more getting along. There was no more trying to come together to finish the project. Whatever the pyramid symbolizes, it's a threat to the controllers, or they would not have introduced that veiled threat of building another tower to do what they're going to do. And the tower is originally called the Tower of Siam, which is in Egypt. It is an allusion to the Great Pyramid. It means Tower of Seven. I don't know why I went on that tangent. I don't even remember what the original question was.
Well,
I don't even remember what the question was.
Well, I'll just say as a tangent to that, though, is that we see this throughout the history of civilization, that all new developments, all trends, all new inventions, all come from a single mind out of somewhere else. And for me, that's been great proof that we can, as an individual, transcend whatever you want to call this place, simulacrum, matrix, etc., into that other self, what H.W. Percival actually calls our triune self. He says we have a thinker and a knower outside, and that we are trapped in the body, we are a doer in the body. But that being said, we have these moments of illumination. All the great minds, the Aristotles, the Platos, the Aristophanes, the Goethe, etc. Their brilliance did not come from a book. Their brilliance came from somewhere else. And that, I believe, is proof that we can perceive outside of this realm, outside of the physical plane, and then create as we want, based, as you were saying, on these universal precepts and these axioms that we are forced to play with. But in the end, who's to say we cannot, through contract throughout the field, change even those, because that is just nature in the end. And maybe that's what, who you call it, there's like a benefactor. Maybe the benefactor is here to help us remember that.
Yeah, I'm on board with the oversoul providing for every measure. And if the construct programming gets out of control and the occupants are being overwhelmed to the point where they're no longer even acknowledging that they are a soul, and they have, as a whole population, they are now entertaining that they're trapped, like soul trap theory, and that I believe this has happened over and over in the past, and it was necessary to introduce a benefactor like Enoch, like Hermes Trismegistus, like Brahma and Saraswati, who were later remembered as Abraham and Sarah. I 100% I'm on board with the idea the oversoul would send like these agents. Remember, Jesus even said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom was of this world, then my servants would fight the Jews." This is exactly what the man said. So I would have to say that Jesus would have been referring to a whole nother reality outside of this experience. In the context of 2,000 years ago, the frame of reference he chose to use was kingdom. But that's just a frame of reference. We now live in a technologically advanced understanding of the multiple worlds concepts. So if Jesus was alive today and was to be doing the parables, and he would speak in different frames of reference. He wouldn't have been talking about old vases and chests and candles, putting a candle on the hill. He would have been speaking with the nuances that would have been understood by a contemporary society. And in doing that, kingdom would have been called construct. Kingdom would have been called world. Kingdom could have been referred to as a whole different system, a whole different universe. So I'm not advocating that Jesus was actually here in the flesh. I do not know if he was or was not. He could have been Apollonius of Tyana. But I am advocating my own personal opinion that the crucifixion story was hijacked, and that the original story of Jesus is just like the Gospel of Marcion. There were no miracles. They're not needed. Spiritual beings do not need that type of candy in order to be convinced. It's not necessary. These were added by the church later to basically ooh and awe the pagans that they were trying to adopt into the fold. So,
yeah, we did a great show with you, Jason. For those that want to go deeper into this, has Christianity been hijacked? I think we did it about 6-7 months ago with you, 8 months. We go deep into all that. It's phenomenal, guys. And yeah, if you look at, we talked about the Gnostic texts a bit, and in those, there's no miracles. There's just teachings from from the Nazarene.
Yeah, I like Gnosticism. I have my library. I have like 5 or 6 books from the 1800s all about Gnosticism, and but even the students of the Gnosis, even in the second, third, and fourth century, AD, they were just searching for the truth as well. So I kind of get frustrated with some people, like when everything is Gnostic and it's all Gnosticism. They people who are raised with a Christian background, and then they come into contact with the writings of the Gnosis. The Nag Hammadi writings, if they're real or not, I don't know. But when they come into contact with them, then they just totally turn their back on everything gospel and everything, just throw the baby out with the bathwater and totally get absorbed into the Gnostic writings, assuming they're true. They're not. Those people were only trying to figure it out as well. And the Gnostics borrowed a lot from the Copts. The Copts in turn borrowed a lot from the earlier Egyptians. The Copts were Egyptians too. So everything everything goes through cultural filters. I mean, Christianity has massive elements of the Orphic faith, and it has a lot of Mithraism. As a matter of fact, the original Romans, when they were passing anti-Christian legislation, it was only the church ex post facto claiming that Rome was hating on Christians, and it's not true. The earlier purges were Mithraic. It was the Mithraic religion that the legionnaires were adopting, and it scared Rome. They had never seen anything like this. An entire legion was decimated because of their faith. Because the Romans said, "Man, y'all got to quit this." And if you don't know anything, Mithra is the cult of the crucified God. Mithra was crucified, had 12 disciples, born December 25th.
The whole nativity narrative and everything.
Yeah, everything, all this whole passion. See, the original story of Jesus did not have the passion story attached to it. It wasn't there. The crucifixion and all wasn't there. It was a guy who was a foreigner and came into the Levant area, and his teachings blew people's minds. He spoke in parables, spoke in truth, did no miracles, didn't do any of that stuff. But even the Jews, when they come in the gospel, it was preserved even in the gospel accounts that Jesus' first contact with the Jews, they did not attack his doctrine. They had nothing to say about the things that were coming out of his mouth. Every accusation by the Sadducees and the Pharisees was racial. They said, "Who are you? No holy man has ever come from Galilee." Or who are you? Search the scriptures, since you claim to no prophet has ever come from Nazareth. And I understand people's ignorance. I understand they don't do the research. They don't know. The Bible doesn't go into the detail and tell you what Galilee was. But any historian worth his metal knows that Galilee was Greek. Everyone who's done the work knows that Alexander of Macedon left a contingent of Greeks, artisans, all kinds of people. A bunch of Greek people from Macedonia found how beautiful the Galilee was, and they built what's called the Decapolis. The Decapolis were 10 Greek cities. This is what Galilee was. It was 10 Greek cities. The Macedonians were Greeks, and many people from Athens joined them, and Corinth, and they all built this fabulous, it was all 100% Greek, like kingdom right there in the middle of Levant. And it's exactly where the 10 tribes of Israel used to occupy. It's the exact same location. And it's like the descendants of the Israelites from the 10 lost tribes. When the Assyrians deported them over 740 years earlier, they had just made full circle. They had come back to dwell and build cities in the land of their ancestors. So these Israelite descendants of Macedon, they come back, and after Alexander the Great moved on and became king of Babylon in 331 BC, they built the 10 cities in the Decapolis. This is exactly where Jesus came from. This is the accusation of the Jews. I mean, who are you? You're not one of us. You're a man of Galilee. And then you're born in Nazareth. And you search the scriptures. No prophet has ever been born in Nazareth. So I've discussed these things in my Dark Scriptures playlist and try to show people there's a reason why Paul when he was writing the letters of the churches, there's a reason why Paul said that each one of his writings was to to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. But in the headers for each letter, it was to Thyatira, it was to Sardis. All 7 cities are Greek that he mentioned. And all these things are washed over. People don't really realize. Even the Book of Revelation, there is not a single original Hebrew manuscript in Revelation because there isn't, because it never was a Hebrew document. It was always a Greek document, and most people don't even know. But you've got to go to the specialist material to realize. Just because the Romans were ruling, Latin was not spoken internationally in the Levant. Neither was Hebrew known to anybody but the Jewish elite. Most of the people that the Jews ruled over spoke Aramaic. The international tongue that everybody learned was Greek. Jesus taught in Greek, spoke in Greek. His parables were all in Greek. So again, guys, you have to bear with me right now. I'm losing weight fast. I'm on a personal deal right now, and I keep losing my focus. I can't even remember what the question was.
No, you're doing great. Yeah, Greek was the English of the time, and of course, there's an interesting idea that this priest class that understands how the reality structure works, and they've essentially ruled from behind the scenes for thousands of years because they understand the nature of reality, that they ingeniously created the Jewish culture to have a scapegoat to point towards, and in contrast to that, created Christianity to be in conflict with them. So you have the people that are the chosen people, God's chosen people, who are superlative to all, and also get to loan the money out. And then you have the others, people who are to spread across the world and spread the gospel of peace and turn the left cheek and bow down to anyone. There's this like whole concept of turning the left cheek and being passive, when we know that's not the actual true teaching of the Nazarene. And so this is, and then you throw the whole Islam in the mix there too, but this has created where we are now, this sort of control matrix where religion is used, and specifically these Abrahamic faiths, to create all the chaos. And I think it's pretty brilliant, going back to how we started, Jason, where you're calling this out, where we're going to see this Christian right rising up, and it's all part of the plan. We see it unfolding now. So to kind of bring us back to how we began, what do you see happening leading into, the election coming in to November, and then protracting this out for the next couple years here? I know we don't believe in like prophecy and projecting that, but obviously we still, as you can see, you tying everything together, and you are able to call stuff as it's coming through your calendrics. What's happening? What do you see happening in the next, I don't know, 12, 18 months?
One, I believe we're gonna reach the pinnacle of the controller's program that's unfolding right now, and that program is to make sure that every element of society understands how corrupt and worthless all of our rulers are, all of our politicians, all of our religious organizations, everything. They're going to continue. This one's been going on for about two and a half years. They have just been massively reporting everything. They want you to understand that public officials get away with anything they do. They want you to understand that all public officials are bought. They want you to understand that the WEF is evil. Bill Gates can do whatever he wants to do. They want you to come to the point where you realize that the entire absolute world is completely just corrupt. At the exact same time, as they're doing this, they're also raising up the anti-Semitism. This is all by design. This is how World War II, preparatory to World War II, the international media did the same thing. And they drew attention to all the anti-Semitism. and they promoted it, and they wanted people, because it actually draws out all those who are truly anti-Semitic. It begins to draw them, and they get more vocal, and they start doing things, and they're really trying to agitate Islam to the nth degree. Kamala Harris, if she even becomes president, or if somebody else comes in, whatever happens, the whole entire plan is to frustrate America and other nations to the point where when they offer their solution, it will be with open arms. I'm not saying I know what the solution is. I don't know. I haven't even done any calendrics. I haven't done isometric projections on politics in over a year. I just haven't cared, disgusted with it. But you and others have been asking me lately a lot about it, and I've had a breakthrough in my own software. I've been working on it for like 6-7 years, but my own date sequence predictive analytics software is called Ophis, and behind the scenes, we've never stopped. Develop slows down. We have a really good programmer, but it's a journey. It's a journey, but I may start using that now. So to answer your question in two ways, one is I'm gonna start looking again in the calendrics. But two, just from basically what I understand right now is that the democratic socialist infrastructure is about to collapse. And I know a lot of people don't see it, but it's about to collapse, and they're going to offer us a hero in the United States. But I provided the illustrations about World War II earlier because it's necessary to understand that what is going to be good in one part of the world won't necessarily be good in other parts of the world. So when I'm saying that the United States is about to get a reprieve, it's not because that the United States people deserve it. It's not because that other countries don't. It has everything to do with the flow of money. And in order to finance the next planned war, American money is going to be needed. Most people don't know that World War II was financed by the Great Depression. Every bit of it was pre-planned. And the international Jewish controlled banks collapsed the American infrastructure, pulled all the money out of America and gave it to Germany, and they gave it to Italy. And Germany and Italy basically, fomented World War II. The German war machine was created by American money against the knowledge of the American people. It was just a shift of wealth, and America paid the price. As Germany was building its war machine using American money, Americans were in bread lines, just getting bread and cheese, and pig feet and all that during the Great Depression. It was terrible. That's what happened. Well, the economy has taken multiple hits in the United States of America, but it's all preparatory. It's to prepare for the next big war. And the next big war is going to be Christianity against Islam, but it's going to be after Islam does something definitive against Israel. But every bit of it's planned. And I even have predictions videos that basically outline what would cause this series of events. I don't know if it's going to be the cause, but it's going to happen in one way or the other. But the whole missile exchanges between Iran and Israel was to normalize the idea that Israel's taking hits. They needed to normalize that for people. Just like the trucker convoys. The trucker convoys in America were there to normalize people. When people see 200 diesel trucks all going in the same direction in a long line, they wanted people to think patriot movement. They wanted to think, oh, this is something that patriots migrate. It's not, man. There's too much merchandise leaving factories in America and going straight into underground vaults and underground systems. They didn't need to normalize that activity, and they did. They did it successfully, 100%. Even the tractor convoys and the farmer deals, every bit of that was normalized. A lot of people don't even know. Thousands of John Deere tractors were driven down streets, were driven all to trains, loaded on trains, and then disappeared into underground facilities. This has been going on. They're very good at what they do. And the missiles that are hitting Israel are to condition the public to understand, oh, Israel, Tel Aviv is taking hits. Jerusalem's taking hits. Pretty soon, the problem that they're having with the Temple Mount, now that they have their red heifers, the main problem with the Temple Mount is the Al-Aqsa Mosque is in the way. And about 18 months ago, I did a video with an ex-Muslim. He's really, really articulate. He said the video's still on my channel, and we discussed this possibility. And I told him that I believe that Israel is going to cause problems with another nation, and they're going to blame that other nation for destroying that mosque. But the Islamic nations are not going to buy it. But it doesn't matter, because when the Islamic nations attack Israel and basically fulfill an Ezekiel 38-39 scenario, I'll explain that. It's actually amazing. But when they fulfill this Ezekiel 38-39, chapter 38 and 39 scenario, it doesn't matter what Islam thinks, because it's going to be the United States Army under the Christian Reich that's going to send their sons and daughters over there to fight them. And we're going to fight Israel's battles. And because if there's any doubt among your listeners that the United States is owned by Israel, you're going to remove that doubt as soon as you see these events unfold.
So if you go back to scriptures, and I don't recall the exact one, but when Jesus is lamenting about the fate of Jerusalem, if you recall that, how do you decode that? What is it that he saw and that he was dismayed about?
That's a really good question. I don't think you're going to like the answer, Dr. Barry. I don't think you're going to like the answer. All right. A lot of attention has been drawn to this by scholarship, and I was very interested as well. And the biblical scholars themselves actually provide the greatest answer for the prophecy of Jerusalem being destroyed and all that. Because the destruction that you're talking about, there's two of them. One of them was AD 70. And from AD 70 to AD 73 until Masada or Masada, the final revolt of Masada, that's the first destruction of Jerusalem. The second destruction of Jerusalem was the Bar Kokhba rebellion, 134 to 135 AD. The reason Jesus was able to do that was because the words of Jesus in that prophecy never entered the historical record until over 25 years after the destruction of Jerusalem. There are no references to Jesus ever making that prophecy in none of the apologist literature. None of the Christian fathers ever quoted that statement. It first appears in the Gospels, but the Gospels did not appear until after the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation appears in the writings of Cerinthus. It was attributed to John, 96 AD, but the Gospels don't make their appearance till about 145 to 175 AD. This is a problem, because we have the writings of Irenaeus, we have the writings of Jerome, we have the writings of the apologists, and they never cited any prophecy like this. And for it to appear only in the Gospels, when it's absolutely known by biblical scholars that none of the Gospels came into existence until over 120 years after Jesus' alleged crucifixion, this is why that prophecy is absolutely dismissed by scholarship.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you for that. A lot of your research goes up into a certain time period, and how about what have you uncovered that predates, the Greek civilizations and so forth, going all the way back to lost continents and so forth. And I know there's a lot of references in old text to that, but how does all that fit in? And is there any reference to a time period? And I know we've already talked about periods maybe where there's more of a free commerce and peace amongst nations, but do you find anything that actually predates that, when you go into the lost land of Mu, which some people say was the origins of the Hebrew language and so forth. So how far back can you go in your research with anything that has any validity, do you think?
Well,
that's kind of a, go ahead.
It's what I've done with Chronicon is literally show that all these civilizations and all these empires and cultures that have been pushed back by uniformitarian model to impossible dates in the past don't go back near as far as that we've been told. And when we analyze the actual data and we take things down to their core fundamentals, we find out that there's a lot of extrapolation, cherry picking, and practicing of exclusions that allowed these historians to put these impossible dates in their books. But we literally have the entire history of the world fits within about a 6,000 year period. And this doesn't mean the world was created 6,000 years ago. It means that something so terrible happened in the ancient world about 6,000 years ago that the few survivors literally believed it was a new heavens and a new earth. So to go back, we have to understand we have vast lacunas in the historical record that we can't fill. One of them is there's a 20-something levels to the underground city of Derinkuyu in Turkey, and now we found out that it's attached to 58 other underground facilities and cities, and they have very sophisticated air shafts that even if the surface of the land was underwater, the air shafts would have drawn air and current and fresh water from higher places in the mountains. People could have lived in an absolutely flooded out land just fine underground. And they had cisterns and wells that drew off all the water into underground river systems that would have carried the water away. And they would have lived in their underground cities, all 20 levels, perfectly dry. The lacuna is that the first 3 levels, we find Hittite graffiti, not actual inscriptions that you find in Hittite temples and on city walls and on stelae and prisms. We find Hittite graffiti. So it is now known that Derinkuyu and these other cities were not built by the Hittites. They were discovered by the Hittite youth. And they were just hanging out in the first 3 levels because the 17 levels underneath that weren't even known. The Hittites didn't even know they were down there. Or they were flooded out with water by that time because of blockages. Either way, there was no one going down. So if we know affirmatively that the Hittite civilization was contemporary with their cousins, the Amuru, the Amorites of the kingdom of Mitanni, which we do know because of the cultural and the cuneiform exchanges, then we know the 19th, 18th, 17th, 16th, 15th, and 14th century BC is when Turkey was occupied by the Hittites and the Hittite kingdoms, and then the Hittite Empire, and then the fall of the Hittites by the Sea People's Confederation in 1229 BC. So this is the period of the Hittites, which necessarily implies that the 58, 59 underground cities of Turkey are even older. And we only have one tradition that I know of, but I'm pretty sure that part of the world has produced many more in other languages that I haven't had privy to. But the one tradition that I found about those underground cities was that in Phrygia, which is the same regions of Hittite Anatolia, it's just a different time period, it's afterward. The Frisians had a tradition that in ancient times before the flood, a king named Antiquities knew of the coming cataclysm. And he gathered his people and he built underground cities and he hid the entire population of his people underground. And that's how the ancestors of the Frisians survived the Great Flood. So their traditions don't even concern an ark. They don't even have an ark, but it's the same landmass, Turkey, that produced Ararat legends of Noah and the ark, Deucalion and the ark, Manu and his giant boat, and like the Mexican Cox and his boat and giant canoe. It's the same story all over the world, but all these ancient stories come out of Turkey. The 7 Greek cities that Paul wrote are all located in Turkey. So Turkey has the Tepe sites. Now I understand that Göbekli Tepe has received a lot of popularity, but it's nowhere near as old as they're claiming. And I have videos that show this evidence because Easter Island has the exact same symbols of the bird cult. Easter Island is only dated 1,000 to 12 centuries ago, and yet Göbekli Tepe having the exact same style of art and megalithic constructions and the exact same pillars of people with their fingers folded in around the pillar. That style of art is precise to the moai of Easter Island. And yet it's found right there in Turkey, the exact same art. And yet Göbekli Tepe's 8,500 BC is total bullshit. And in order to perpetuate such a lie, the archaeologists have to say, well, they must have intentionally buried their entire infrastructure. And now that we found out that recently it's been divulged that, oh, this might be 25 square miles of the tepe might extend 25 square miles. Well, now they have to rewrite and go back and unsay what they formerly said, that all of this was specifically buried by the people. Now we find out there's another 40 tepe sites. Then you find out that after the tepes were done with, the walled enclosures, the Edens of the old world, now we find out that after that culture collapsed, because the vapor canopy collapsed, the survivors built new settlements. After the tepe sites, we have what are known as the Huyuk sites, like cattle Huyuk. Now we have the goddess, and we have the bull god. We have everything that we find in Minoan, not at Knossos on Crete. So as I have put together the history of the world in Minoan linear A and linear B, I do not find this great antiquity of the uniformitarians. It all falls apart. Everything is relatively recent. It's not as ancient as people say, nowhere near. And what fascinates me is that it literally lines up with 3895 BC to 3439 BC, the first 456 years of the pre-flood world, according to the book of Genesis, which has the pre-flood world at 1656 years. Then the Great Flood being at 2239 BC by many species of analysis. I do have a video that shows the dating of the Great Flood. No one has ever come forth and wanted to debate it. I have many invitations extended. The Great Flood is easy to date. It's easy to date from records that are 2,000 years old, and it's really easy to date from the writings of the Arabians, who preserved many chronomarkers in their own writings and travelogues 1,000 years ago. And then many Jewish scholars who have done the chronology of the book of Jasher, the chronology of the Torah and the Talmud, they even pinpoint the exact date, 2239 BC. So these amazing archaeological finds that say civilizations go back eons and eons, I have seen no evidence for it. And yet, in order to push all these dates back, we have to ignore one thing: chronology. Today, I'm still the only known chronologist. I have no contemporaries that are stepping up and saying, "Hey, Jason, check this out. You're wrong about this. You haven't shown your data. You haven't published it. You haven't approached me and shown me anything." Chronology has to be ignored in order to push back all these fantastic dates, because we have thousands of chronological references in the last 2,400 years of hundreds of ancient texts, and it's all purposely ignored in order to push this BS. So you're asking me about how far can I go back? In the traditions, I can only go back to the pre-flood world because we don't have any actual archaeology. The only true archaeological sites that I know of that are antediluvian, because the entire world has changed. It doesn't look anything like it did prior to the flood during the vapor canopy. The only thing I know is Pumapunka in South America, which is Technolithic, and also the Great Pyramid of Giza, which is Technolithic. All the other pyramids are post-Technolithic reconstructions or attempts to reconstruct the Great Pyramid, and they're all inferior. Most of them have collapsed. Many times they're fake. They're not even true pyramids. They're actual hills or mounds or temples that have imploded, collapsed by subsequent earthquakes, have been repurposed and then resurfaced with facing stones like Teotihuacan. Most people think the Pyramid of the Sun is the largest pyramid in the world because of its mass, but it's not. It's not a true pyramid. Archaeologists have tunneled into it and found 6 subsequent constructions, all from different time periods, all of them having been destroyed, and they go in there and they pour lime over all the ruins and they round it out and they put new stones on it and make it look like a pyramid. That's not a pyramid. Great Pyramid of Egypt.
Jason, are you familiar with Gunung Padang? I think it's how you say it in Indonesia. Some say
No,
it's
not.
the oldest pyramid in the world. And I know we've talked about carbon dating hoax, but some have saying it goes back to 27,000 years. Just interesting if you're familiar at all with it, might check into it. Some say it's a remnant from the lost civilization of Mu and stuff like that. But
I'm not opposed to Churchward's research on Mu. I'm not opposed to it. I question it because he used the same chrono markers that others did when they made their mistakes for which I have corrected, like Manetho, like Berosus. These men are used as authorities on Egyptian chronology. Most people don't know that Manetho was Greek. He was studying in the Alexandrian library 6 centuries after Egypt was gone. Hieroglyphic, he didn't even know how to read hieroglyphics or Demotic. People don't realize this. What we take for as an authority on Egyptian chronology today comes out of Manetho, but Manetho himself knew nothing about ancient Egypt. It was all guesswork. Then what we take on today in our encyclopedias and in our textbooks, what we take as an authority to the chronology of ancient Babylon, Assyria, and Sumer, we cite Berosus. And again, people just don't realize Berosus was writing about Babylonian chronological systems. He was a Greek at Alexandria as well. He was writing about these systems 16 centuries after that area of the world collapsed. And we didn't even discover their cities until 1849 when we began digging in Assyria, in the Iran-Iraq area, and started, these cities came to light again. Yeah, we can't. It's just like me. How would you ever take me at face value as a authoritarian on the Civil War if no publications, no books, nothing had ever been published about the Civil War until I came around and wrote the first book about it? But the Civil War was a century and a half ago. Well, actually, it's almost 2 centuries ago, getting close to it. So there's no way. These men did the best they could, but we rely on them. And the calendrical systems that they used were the one that was extant in the day. They did not understand. Manetho never looked at his colleagues' research because Strabo, Diodorus Siculus, and Eudoxus of Cnidos were very clear. The Egyptians' long histories of 27,000 years, 13,000 years between events, 14,000 years, there are no references anywhere in the whole of Egyptian texts, hieroglyphics, date stelae, monumental records, even traditions. Nothing in Egypt talks about these long periods of time. You find them in the writings of Strabo, Diodorus, Plutarch, Herodotus. That's where you find these long numbers every time. You don't find them in Egyptian texts. You find them in Greek texts. And the Greeks themselves said that the Egyptians did not reckon the year because the sun could not be trusted. Herodotus said that in Egyptian history, the priest distrusted the sun because 4 times in recorded history, the sun played false and it did things it wasn't supposed to do. Therefore, it could not be trusted with the reckoning of times. What they did trust was the moon. And every 30 days was an Egyptian year. I'm not making that up. I cited all the ancient historical texts that talk about that and the ancient Greek scholars who said that. This totally changes the entire history of Egypt and makes it completely contemporary with Sumer, Babylon, Assyria, the Hittites, and the Amur. There's no mystery here. Now, this the same token with Berosus, the scholars of the day literally told their public when Berosus was writing these fantastic 471,000 years ago histories, Oannes appeared on the shore and started the construction of Babylon. Absolute crap. It's 471,000 turnings of the stars. It was shars. And when you apply that from the days of Berosus, you get exactly what Callisthenes calculated. Callisthenes was the scholar who attended Alexander of Macedon into Babylonia when Alexander of Macedon became Alexander the Great. They went through the Babylonian libraries. Callisthenes literally published that these 470,000 year-long deals were a mistake because he said that they calculated back to the 19th century BC, and that's impossible unless you reckon a Babylonian year, a shar, as a day. So once you make all the necessary corrections with the calendar, then the history of the world isn't very near as far back as we've been told. And my problem with a lot of these like Southeast Asian claims is that they borrowed into the same mistakes the ancient Hindus did. Because when the Puranic commentaries were written, it was post-reset. The Vedas are older. They were pre-reset. When the Great Mediterranean Dark Age happened, prior to that, we had the Atharva Veda, the Rig Veda, the other two Vedas. After the Great Mediterranean reset, the people of India, the Dravidians, were putting together their commentaries. These Puranic commentaries are absolutely packed full of stuff, but now they're packed with mythology and misnomers, and they're packed with inaccuracies in the arithmetic of calendars. Now, the Kali Yuga, which was 432,000 turnings of the stars, the same thing we find in the Sumerian text, the same thing we find in 3 Mayan Bactans. 3 Mayan Bactans are 144,000 days each. 144,000 times 3 is 432,000. The same period we find in the Sumerian king list and in the regnal list. Everything matches the ancient Kali Yuga period. Was 432,000 turnings of the stars, which is 12 centuries. It's 1,200 years. Now, I've read some pretty good Vedic commentaries where they even admit that a 1,200-year period was sacred in ancient times, but they couldn't figure out why. The reason they couldn't figure out why is because the Puranic commentaries were written in a post-reset period when the year had been changed to 365.25 days. It's very difficult. This is why modern scholars made the mistake about the Mayan long count. I know you guys are familiar that in 2011, my publisher released one of my books that was written 3 years earlier about the Mayan long count, not ending in 2012. It ends in 2046. The mistake is easy to make because modern scholars tried to apply a modern interpretation of the year we know in this biosphere now as 365.24 days, and they applied it to a system that only knew a 360-day year. So the 1,872,000 turnings of the stars of the Mayan long count system, which is 13 epochs called Bactans, each one being 144,000 days, cannot possibly end on 2012 because the Maya themselves did not know of a 365.24 day year until after the calendar was implemented. The 365-day year came as a result of a reset. It changed the whole movement of the sky. It slowed the sky sim down 5.24 days a year. But the Mayan calendar was already implemented, and they were counting the days, not the years. So the Mayan long count ends in 2046, not 2012. The reason I'm mentioning this is because the same thing happened with the ancient Hindus. They did not understand, after a systemic reset, they did not understand the high sophistication of the Vedic materials and the pre-Vedic materials for which we've lost. We no longer have access to them, but we have inferences that they existed in many ancient texts. So when the arithmetic is corrected, we find out these impossible ages were actually not impossible at all. Because every single one of the Hindu ages, these great yugas, are all divisible by 144. 144,000 years, 288,000 years, 432,000 years, 648,000 years, 864,000 years, 720,000 years. Every single one of them are divisible by 144,000 years. But it was days. It's days, because 144,000 days is simply 400 years. And this was the great epic in ancient times, 400-year periods. The mistakes were all crept in, not because of a lack of intellect, not because people were dumb and they just couldn't figure things out. The mistakes were introduced over centuries because these systemic resets that I have documented as the Phoenix phenomenon are real. And every time the Phoenix phenomenon has reared up, this is when we have in the archaeological record major dark ages. And it takes 2 or 3 centuries for people to come back. And when they do, the histories that they are recorded priorly have to be rewritten, refigured out, reconfigured, recalculated, and mistakes have crept in every single time.
I'm muted. We brought this up, I think, on our first interview, that this could be a great explanation behind the mud flood phenomenon that we've seen with the Tartarian research, that was initiated by a Phoenix event. Yeah,
I believe so.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. You mentioned this historical record around the sun not being trustworthy, that weird things have happened with the sun. But the
Yeah, I
moon,
wanted to ask about that.
well, and I just bring up Charles Fort because related to this, because you got me into Charles Fort and the Book of the Damned, which I read, which is phenomenal because it is a truly scientific exploration of strange phenomenon. And I just had a somewhat of an experience. So a couple of days ago, throughout our entire valley here, the river valley, we had millions of dragonflies come out of nowhere. There we go. The complete books
Yeah.
of Charles Fort. Good man.
Yeah,
Good
one of my oldest favorites here. Yeah, we have these not only millions of dragonflies, but they're like these green yellow ones we've never seen before.
Yeah, so
sorry, go ahead, Mike.
I shared a video of this. I shared a video of outside with dragonflies flying everywhere, and I could literally catch them in the air. And it was, I mean, pretty magical. And we are in the, I don't know if we are now, according to your calendar, but we are supposedly in the year of the dragon, which is interesting. But that being said, I shared this on Instagram and Telegram, and I got a lot of feedback that others were experiencing this from as far as Florida, Europe, all sorts of different places within just this last few days. So there was this massive dragonfly experience we just had, which reminds me of Fort's, accounts of fish falling from the sky and stuff. But that being said, it is interesting that this is sort of in alignment with the Bill Gates mosquito releasing and stuff, because I believe, if I'm correct, dragonflies love to eat mosquitoes, I think. But anyways, yeah.
Well,
So
dragonflies also interesting in Native American medicine. When dragonfly medicine, crosses your path, it's about exposing the illusion.
Yeah, so I only bring this up because, one, I'd love to touch on the sun phenomenon, two, Charles Fort a bit, and how this is great evidence of, as you've shown, Jason, the anomalies within the simulacrum. And I have a feeling that because our consciousness directly affects the field, and as this awakening is happening, thanks to folks like yourself and our channel and stuff, we're going to start seeing a lot more of these Fortean sort of instances in nature. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah, well, I mean, every system, no matter how sophisticated, is going to suffer some type of entropy. And even a programmed reality that has been on a loop for thousands and thousands of years and for thousands and thousands of times, unchanging programming, because it's symbiotic, because it in part relies also on the energy fed into it by its occupants. This is what dungeon programming. This is where I came up with my theory with dungeon programming, because the construct itself requires. The only reason dungeon programming exists is because it needs to maintain a modicum of energy. Conservation of energy is a very real thing. It's another one of the things I was trying to tell you about earlier, about when you throw a brick up into the sky, it's going to come down. There are things that are axiomatic. There are things that we can all agree that are true, and entropy is one of those. So with all systems suffering some type of entropy, even computer breakdowns, even any coder can tell you that there is, you've heard of linkage breakdown, like hyperlinks and links in your deal. Sometimes the links over a period of time, all they got to do is lose one little character and the whole link's corrupted. So this entropy is introduced in different ways. Sometimes it's induced, sometimes it's just quite natural, but the breakdown is perfectly natural. And dungeon programming is the ability of the construct to corral enough consciousness into a certain activity, and then the consciousnesses themselves are actually providing the energy to self-perpetuate whatever that feedback loop is. The feedback loop feeds itself by the very occupants that entertain it. So this is a way, creating paradigms and getting as many people as possible to participate in them is a way the construct corrals people and maintains its power source. It's able to use power in other areas. So I'm on board with the idea that the more souls that are waking up in the construct, because I've already accepted this to be true, would mean that the more souls waking up in the construct creates a power source problem. That power source problem is going to introduce more entropy because the self-repair systems that are these protocols for the replication of reality tunnels are going to be defective because energy is now being used to create new reality tunnels because it has to create a believable world to every single participant. If you're not participating in dungeon programming and you're living your own life and you're going your own way and you're now disbelieving all these things, it still has to produce for you a believable world. That believable world requires programming. You have to receive enough signals for your central nervous system to interpret them as a believable reality that's unfolding around you, whether you're building it or not. Because there's still a difference. It doesn't matter if you're in dungeon programming or not. You're either a broadcaster or you're a receiver. You're either a creator or an occupant. You're either living in the lives of others or you're building the world that you want to live. There's never an in-between. You're going to be phased into one or the other. But to the construct, if a large body of people are starting to wake up, there's no way to correct that. So it must make an overcorrection, just like in 1867, 68, and 69, when we had the insect rains and insect floods of the United Kingdom. I did a video on this it was one of my first videos when I showed Charles Fort's data that all the insects had disappeared in England. And after a 2-year period, it became very noticeable that the rodent population had died off. And it was now affecting the ecology of the United Kingdom. And when the scientific periodicals and the newspapers started recognizing that, damn, we have no roly-polies, we have no beetles, no spiders, no dragonflies, no moths, no butterflies, there's no ants, no one's seen a fly in 2 years. All the insects have been gone. The construct itself received that as a signal that the collective realized there was a problem. So it didn't solve the problem, it overcorrected. The overcorrection was to flood the UK with too many rivers. In that book that you're holding right now, there are many examples in 1867, 68, and 69 of rivers of insects falling from the blue sky. Sometimes ships were almost capsized because the volume of insects that just fell from the sky. Chimney sweeps were now in charge of sweeping insects in London together just to burn them because there was just too many of them. It literally overcorrected. So if we take this information and we apply it, because remember, in Archaix, one of my tenets, if something is true somewhere, it's probably true everywhere. So what I'm telling you is that apply that same scenario to today with everybody waking up. So if not everybody, but with a large significant amount of the population waking up and no longer participating in dungeon programming, no longer feeding into all this BS, we're not empowering the feedback loops that are already operating. Therefore, each one of us, the construct has to create a believable reality tunnel for Mike, for Barry, for Jason, for every member of our communities, every single one of us, every day when we are jacked back into the central nervous system and we wake up inside of our hardware and we're no longer where we were while we were asleep. We're back in the construct. Now the construct has to feed us all these reality tunnels so we believe this hardware. The problem is there's going to become a point where overcorrection is necessary. We call this a reset. The reset removes people. This is one thing that my own listeners have a problem with. I see it in the comment sections. I see it in the comment sections a lot. But the Phoenix phenomenon literally removes populations. And people think this is bad. I don't agree. I just don't agree. But in the historical record, when the Phoenix events occurs, whole populations are decimated. Sometimes they're vanished. A lot of times there's a bunch of children left behind. No one knows what happened to the adults. The Phoenix phenomenon is the overcorrection. It's when the system can't can't maintain structural integrity anymore, and a bunch of people's reality tunnels begin to collapse, and they begin to unwind. The system can't self-perpetuate hundreds of millions of reality tunnels. If people are participating in dungeon programming, it must overcorrect. That overcorrection is systemic reset. Systemic reset literally removes the people who do not want to participate.
And with each individual that is awakening, it creates more entropy in the larger system because
Exactly.
the construct has been taking our energy, which creates personal entropy. And what I've seen just in my own practice of medicine is to create a turnabout in anything we think of as disease is to gather more energy. And disease is nothing more than being synonymous with lack of energy. So what we're in fact doing is removing that dungeon programming. And in the process, even indigenous cultures talked about repairing the luminous egg, which was a metaphor for our own personal firmament. So as we retrieve our spirits, so to speak, and gather energy, that automatically repairs our own atmosphere or our firmament, and then makes more available energy so that we don't suffer personal entropy, and our bodies actually heal. That was the experience that I observed. And now we have a period, I think, of, many people waking up, still a minority perhaps, but then again, that's creating exactly what you're describing. So it makes perfect sense. So I think the moral of the story is all that we can conjecture and put together through research and everything is wonderful, because it does help to break down the construct. But the only thing we can actually prove is things through our own experience, which is developing practices and our inner game to the point where we can actually observe the results of our practices. So I think that's where a lot of us are at right now, and in which case we can practice that old adage, which is be in the world but not of it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I'm not trying to doomsay. I don't want to fearmonger. I don't want.
Oh, I know that.
And it's so difficult because this is the photo negative of a real reality, and everything is in reverse here. And what we think is actually negative is probably positive. And this is what I get with the Phoenix phenomenon. I don't see that negativity. I see it. I see this Phoenix is providing exodus. Everything that is attached to in the ancient world was Enoch. And the story of Enoch is liberating. And then it's attached to the Great Pyramid. And the Great Pyramid, the whole story, the traditions behind the Great Pyramid is that it, in essence, was created to be a portal, and that a portal leads to somewhere that's not here. So this is what I do on my channel. I try to put all these pieces together, and people's own, I guess they bring their own. It's just hard to explain. It's to me, the entire archaic paradigm, everything I've unfolded is absolutely liberating. And it's giving me personal freedom in my life to not worry about the collective. I don't give a damn about. That's why I haven't even been doing predictions videos lately. I just don't care anymore. It's like, wow, it's all scripted. It's so easy to foresee. It loses its veneer with me. And now I just want to live. I just want to live, and I want to learn, and I want to teach. And I no longer care about. It's just I know that when 2040 comes around, it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. This is something that it's bad for those who are in love with the construct. Yeah, it's bad for those who want to rule the construct. A lot of the eschatology is not aimed at the human family, and most people don't see this. Pay attention to the wording of a lot of prophecies, not just the Judeo-Christian, in the Zoroastrian as well. And you'll find out, man, a lot of this is aimed at the rulers, the kings, and the princes of the earth. And when you find this out, it's like, wow, this is really liberating. It's like there's going to be people here that make their exodus, and there's going to be other people here that don't make exodus to a later point, but they're the ones that actually get to see the elite get kicked in the ass. I kind of want to see that.
Yeah, that would be worth the price for sure, for staying in a body for a while longer.
Yeah, well, yeah. I can definitely see it. So it's not about the doomsaying. It's really just about an awareness, because um, we can pull value from the Christian writings. We can pull value from the Zoroastrian writings. We can pull value straight out of the book of Quran, out of the Quran. It's the real value is in what we do with whatever information that's been put into the field, and whatever garment that it's wrapped in. I don't care if that garment is Babylonian. There's going to be value there. I don't care if that garment is Afrocentric. There's going to be some value I can derive from that. In the end, what we do with whatever information that we come in contact with is how our soul journey will go for us. And if you only see the dark, then you're going to experience a lot of shadows. But if you see things as liberating, then you're going to experience more freedoms.
Yeah.
Well said.
I'll just end with this for those who still don't quite get Jason's message and what you do for your community. This is from a post you put on YouTube yesterday, answering emails this morning. One drew my attention, a guy not understanding why everything is going wrong at the same time and wanting advice. Figured others may need to see my response. So here it is. Everything is about energy. Yours is off. Two things need to be done to reverse the trajectory of negative events. You need to shock the system with a pattern break. This is one thing I love that you talk about a lot, Jason. Change your daily routine. Break away from whatever it is you've been doing, even if you think activities have nothing to do with the circumstances. A fast, which is what you're doing now, right, Jason? A fast shocks the system and accelerates the change. Drink a little bone broth, but eat no food. Coffee or tea, a little is good, 2 to 5 days. And write down on paper all the things you want in life, what you want to experience and accomplish, with no hint in this list that things are not that way. Do not acknowledge that things need to change, but be thankful that your list is already happening. Casually read over your list only sparingly. Do not obsess and attach anxiety to these things you've listed. Let them go daily, meaning do not dwell, because this is too a type of anxiety. Go about your days as if these things are already a reality. As time passes, you notice real quickly that the universe solves problems far better and faster than we do. Phenomenal advice there, based within the framework of your understanding. And I hope people can take that to heart and definitely go follow Jason on his channel, which is in the show notes below. This has been an absolutely fantastic and riveting conversation, as they always are. Jason, would you like to sum anything up or end anything here as we close out this chat today?
No, man, it's good talking to you guys again. It was this conversation did go pretty good. It was a really good flow to it. I'm surprised, because my energy level is low, but my acumen right now is very high. I'm gonna go back and listen to it, because I was just in my flow. That's all.
Well, it was a great conversation. And by the way, it looks like your fast is agreeing with you. And I'd recommend anybody take a little break, a dietary change, anything, just anything you can change your mind about, is revolutionary. As who said that? Jerry Rubin or somebody a long time ago. The greatest revolutionary act is to change your mind, but it really is. And you look great, and good luck with the rest of your fast or whatever you're doing there.
I'm just doing a system purge, but that requires me to do a little fasting.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're big fans of it. Bear, you're probably coming up on your upcoming fall fast you do every year, right?
Yeah, we do 21 days.
Yeah. And I intermittent fast every day, take 16 hours off a day I just do a little bit of thermogenic coffee, and it works well. It's a fantastic thing. Like, less is more, right? Well, Jason, good on you, man, and good on Dawn. She's been in the chat saying that she's a little ahead of you doing the same thing, and that's fantastic. Health is wealth. Health is everything. That's the foundation of our platform. And if you guys have any questions or anything about fasting, breath work, farming, all that, you can find out more on alfavedic.com. Life is a journey. It is your own hero's journey. So embrace it every day. get out of the dungeon programming, and remember to get outside, get your feet in the dirt, go plant something, go show Mother Nature some love, and it will come right back to you. And hey, thanks again, Jason. It's been a great chat. Remember,
Awesome.
the materialism isn't everything. It's much more than that. So get out of fear and go love your life and love your family and your friends. And we'll see you next week as we go into a deep dive on decentralized private phone options outside of the typical system. A very practical talk next week. We're going to be talking with the creators of Above Phone and how to, you know, take some practical steps towards not feeding into the dungeon programming system. Okay, guys.
These are also interdimensional phones, by the way, so you'll enjoy the talk.
Yes. Awesome. Take care, guys. Love you all. Cheers.